Well, we won last week, which was good.
A win is a win.
Yeah.
7-4. That's good.
We're at her house at Linden Hall. This is Mike the Mailman's home.
Hi,
We're
everybody.
filming out this week, everybody.
Very cozy.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is cool. About once a season, maybe half a time a season, we skip it, but we try to get up here to what is also a bed and breakfast that you can book during football season.
Yeah. They don't check IDs here, so we have coffee.
That's right, we have coffee.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Yeah. Good coffee.
After that snoozer of a game last week, I've been drinking coffee for 6 straight days now.
A win is a win is a win.
I thought it was exciting, actually. I was
Well, there was
excited.
definitely some drama.
Yeah, well, not gambling-wise, but it was funny. It was fun watching Christian Valou and that little quarterback that was going to start run down the field after Sean got hurt. I don't know. I had a good time.
Yep.
The best part is not a one of us has the flu.
Right,
So we'll do the whole show. Grab your pencil and your paper. It's the obligatory PSU pregame show. Welcome back to the obligatory PSU pregame show from her house at Linden Hall, home of beloved campus icon Mike the Mailman.
Hi, everybody. Hello. Welcome, guys. Welcome to her house.
Yeah,
Always good to have you here. Always good.
it's a pleasure to be here.
Always good to be here. There's always muffins and cookies and treats.
Sure. And
Big
you can
fan.
stay here. You could receive this hospitality if you pay Mike the Mailman, whatever the rate is.
Yes,
for his
exactly right.
illegal bed and breakfast operating outdoors at a license.
We have a license, actually.
Oh, do you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Mike does
Actually.
Actually.
So we beat Rutgers last week, which is a hell of a lot better than not beating Rutgers.
Amen.
Yep.
Former Penn State and NFL defensive tackle Brandon Noble.
Yes, it is, and we played the way that we really should have. You know, I mean, coming into this, I don't think anybody really, you know, I know when we did the last show, obviously, you know, nobody knows that the team's going to get the flu, and
right.
what can happen when something like that runs through a team.
Yeah.
I played one game in the NFL with the flu. I played terrible. I remember the D-line coach actually talking to me after the game and saying, you should not have played in this football game. You should have told the training staff that you were sick. I was like in the bathtub all night, Saturday night, got up and played, ended up with IVs after the game. But I was
not an image I really needed.
No.
Probably neither did you.
I was dressed in the bathtub. That's how bad it was. I didn't even have the strength to take my clothes off. And but I tried to play because I didn't want to lose my job, right? So there's a mindset of like, I've got to be on the field.
Right.
Don't want to miss it. So to watch the team come out and kind of get through a crazy week and win was a good sign. I mean, it really was a good sign after the last handful of games.
The final score does not really tell the story.
No.
That first half was absolutely dreadful in every sense. I mean, it was
Unless you're a
exhilarating.
punter.
It was exhilarating for me because I had unders tickets on everything.
Exactly.
So I was living it up. But at some point, I'm like, all right, I want them to now score. So
Right.
I care more about them winning than me winning money. So, but yeah, I mean, James Franklin said that the Lash winning was basically a trauma center last week. They had IVs.
IV bags everywhere, yeah.
And so bad that Friday they did not have a active scholarship quarterback. Right? They were going with fourth string. Was it Stahl?
Mason Stahl, I think. Yeah.
Mason Stahl, who
was probably very uptight.
Oh yeah,
He probably didn't sleep a lick before the game, right? Yeah.
No, so it's good. I mean, and they ended up having obviously Vayu who came in and did some nice things, and Clifford. Sort of. I mean, we haven't been talking about his injury. It doesn't seem like in the last week, basically because Vayu did well, and Sean did not do well at all when he was in. It sort of. I don't understand. I mean, the offensive line blocked better when Sean was not in, which is not Sean's fault, but it just was strange.
Sometimes, though, in the dynamic, right, is all of a sudden, here's a young kid, and sometimes it wakes guys up a little bit, right? It's to say, we've got to do a little bit more because there's someone back there that isn't quite ready to go, right? And so when you've got a guy like Clifford who's been around the block, he's been there, you know, and the team expects certain things from him. Right, when someone new comes in, right, you get almost protective of them, right, and you maybe play a little bit harder, and sometimes that looks like they're maybe playing better for him than they would for Clifford, but it's really just more of like a protective, like, hey, we got to go because the backup's in mentality.
And not for nothing, 3 of the 5 starting offensive linemen were out with the flu, and they were out, right?
They were
and Walker.
Again, maybe a good thing.
Right. I mean, Anthony Wiggin playing is not a good thing ever.
No.
But for whatever reason, they came out in the second half and did some nice things.
Yeah.
But the defense looked unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, their defense was so good.
Yeah, I think two
really
things
good.
Right off the top, thinking about that game. Number one, to your point, Brendan, we've praised the psychological resiliency of this team all season long.
Yeah.
For them to weather that week that they had and to have as rough a first half as they did and to come out and play the whole football game and come away with a pretty convincing win, that reinforces that to me. Plus, first time in Big Ten Conference history for Penn State to finish the season with 2 shutouts. Hard to do.
Very hard to do.
Hard to keep even bad football teams off the board.
No doubt about it.
Easier when it's Rutgers, though, because I think, what's the stat? Rutgers has scored 2 touchdowns against Penn State in 8 games.
Yeah, they are terrible. They
really
are very,
dreadful.
very bad.
Yeah.
And to the point you made last week, important for Penn State to slam the door on them
100%.
once again. But I want to go back to what Kevin was saying about the offensive line. Now, again, the huge qualifier after everything we just said. It is Rutgers, and they stink. But the shuffling around on the O-line, we saw Juice Scruggs have to play center. And this isn't the first time this season he's played in that position. And I think will probably be the presumptive starter there to start next season.
Yeah.
That's encouraging.
Oh, yeah.
You also saw at the 2 tackle spots, again, Rutgers, but young guys. Bryce Effner, underclassman, who the coaching staff really praised in the offseason. And we finally got to see probably the biggest name recruit from this most recent class in Langdon Tangwall go out there and hold down the left tackle spot really well with a guy who had not played football since he was a junior in high school, thanks to coronavirus in Christian Veilleux, and protected his blind side all day.
Yeah, that was a good story, and he can play the next 2 games and still keep his red shirt.
Which is awesome.
Yeah,
he could
really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of wish he had burnt it. We had seen him earlier this year. Maybe they won another game or 2. But, they pieced it together, and obviously the defense did what the defense does. And but Veilleux, I mean, how about that performance? He's another guy that hadn't played since he was a junior in high school. And I enjoyed, I mean, Franklin, the second question the presser was like, why didn't he play at Iowa? And I think it's probably the correct answer is like, because he is a true freshman.
Yeah.
And that was 3 months ago or 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And he has now improved to the point where we're comfortable with him being number 2. And look, he still had some errant throws. He is a true freshman, but
absolutely
he looked under control. He did look under control.
It was helpful. I mean, Sean Clifford's basically a ragdoll at this point, being behind this group of untalented players. We'll call them players and not what I want to call them, for 3 years, just getting killed.
Yeah, he's beat up.
And now Veilleux looks so fresh. He's just throwing his body, getting the extra couple yards, and he's not scared in the pocket like Sean is, justifiably, I think Sean is. But it makes me a little bit more confident for next year if Clifford doesn't come back that there's at least a serviceable option until Alar or Pagula are ready.
Yeah.
And actually, he really, on one of his runs he made, he was anxious to hit the guy that was going to hit him. He put his head down, was really ready to bash him. I said, wow, this kid has a lot of
look, if he starts next year, he will learn very quickly that the offensive line is inept and he cannot do that.
Yeah, that's right. But it was fun.
Yeah.
It was a good win. It was
big win.
Definitely a good win. You shut out a bad team.
Yep.
Right, you got your backup quarterback a lot of reps. You got a lot of young guys reps, even though you didn't really want to. And they overcame a bad loss to Michigan, the flu, right, and they won a football game.
Yeah.
So now that you've got a little momentum going into the last one.
Yeah, and you love the shutout. I do
Absolutely.
love that. Yeah, but for what it's worth, you can only win the games that are left on your schedule. Would have been terrible.
Yes.
Terrible to lose to Rutgers, and it was not looking so good there for a little while. So they turned it around. Now they got a chance to finish up as strong as you can hope for at this point against Michigan State. And we'll talk about that on the other half of the show, but right now we're going to go to break. We'll be back. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the obligatory PSU Pregame Show. Happy to be here with you in the homey confines of the Her House at Linden Hall. Thanks again for hosting us, Mailman. Chris Buchignani with Brandon Noble and Mike the Mailman. We kicked Horne out just for a segment to welcome in a special guest, friend of the program, Greg Woodman, you are a Penn State grad. You're a longtime resident of Happy Valley with a lengthy resume of Penn State bona fides. I'm going to let you tell the audience a little bit more about who you are.
Well, guys, thanks for having me. I've been a big fan of the show and cheering you guys on as you've gone wider and deeper around the country, reaching new audiences.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
new lows. New lows. Exactly right.
So I'm honored to be on the show. Just my background, I was a student here at Penn State, started in 1977, didn't finish until 1983.
I like it.
Was a student entrepreneur.
Excellent plan.
I did a lot of Penn State products back when I was a student, and that's what kind of led me to do the book.
Yeah, so Greg, you've maybe noticed it in the background of the set the last few weeks. You have written a book. Kevin and I congratulate you on finishing it. Easier said than done,
awesome.
for sure.
I like it. A completed book is a good book.
You have provocatively titled this, Greg, Why Penn State? And that is a question I think many fans have been asking throughout this season, although usually there's a comma after why. It's more like, why Penn State? But I think now especially, with all of the discourse that has gone on around the team in the season, you have produced something that really gets to the heart of why people care about this team and the school and the place that it's a part of. And tell us a little bit more about the book and why you wrote it.
Okay, well, I think you hit it right on the head. The heart of Penn State. And the subtitle is Why the 1980s Gave Nittany Lions a Common Cause, Culture, and Shared Values. And since I was a student here as an entrepreneur, coming out with the Penn State Football Annual, the Are You a Penn Stater guidebook back in 1981, I just fell in love with Penn State and really, and as a kind of a general arts and science major, studied kind of these special feelings and emotions that Penn Staters have for this team. And back then I started out selling my student ticket, which I paid $4 for, and I held it up and somebody bought it for $50. The stadium
you
back
were onto something.
Well, and the stadium back then was only 64,000 students in 1977.
My cousin tried that when he was in school here and he got arrested.
They started clamping down on it. They started clamping down on that. So, I started by selling a T-shirt and tailgates, and as kind of walking around in 1978, we were number 2. Oklahoma was number 1. Students were chanting sooner or later, Oklahoma. So I came out with a T-shirt and then went tailgate to tailgate selling these shirts with my fraternity brothers. And I think what happened to me is I went from tailgate to tailgate, more and more people were exposing this special feeling and emotion. So I was hooked. I was hooked, and from there, from the rest of my career, 45 years later, I'm still in the business of capturing kind of the special feelings and emotions that are unique to Penn State fans.
Yeah, that's cool.
I can remember, did you guys presented the Joe Paterno cardboard stand-up?
Well, yeah, a whole series of products kind of coming from those tailgates. People would feed ideas. We had a little crew of employees that would feed ideas, and we came out with the Are You a Penn Stater guidebook, the two twins on the Nittany Lion,
that's right.
Cardboard Joe Paterno.
Actually, the Cardboard Joe Paterno I put up at the post office downtown.
Right.
I didn't think anyone liked it, but I liked it, and you liked it, and people coming in, I don't know if the management liked it, but the customers loved it. So.
Well, yeah, that's how I met Mike. I would be shipping these Cardboard Joe Paternos, and I'd walk into the post office and say, how the hell do you ship the cardboard figure in a box?
Right. And he'd have to go get some help. Figure that out for you, right?
So he taught me how to get a box and how to ship them, and
they all got there, right?
They all got there.
Well, and you see, that's why you come to Obligatory. Certainly not for the insight, that's for sure, or the intelligent discourse. But if you or a family member received a cardboard stand-up Joe Pa back in the day via the USPS, we got both sides. Now you know the backstory.
Yes.
Now you know the backstory. But if I may be so bold as to presume to speak for our audience, it is true that you do not come here for the nuts and bolts, X's and O's. It's more about, what we try to do here is just capture the good feeling everybody gets around rooting for the Nittany Lions. And there is a short list of places and schools and teams in the world that you can make a lucrative 45-year career out of tapping into enthusiasm for them. So it's a special place in its best and its worst times. A little bit more about what's in the book, Greg, which you can get at ypennstate.com in hardcover or in paperback on Amazon. Makes an excellent Christmas gift for the Penn Stater in your life, including yourself.
It's also available at Lions Pride and the Student Bookstore.
Nice.
And what's in the book is a picture of Mike. You know,
What else
again,
do you need?
kind of the
What else do you
iconic
need?
figure of. I met him, like I said, shipping a lot of product, and our motto was bringing Penn State to you back then. And we started mail order. It was before the internet. So a lot of walking to the post office, which I'm still in love with walking to the post office. People tease me every day. I go to my P.O. box. But what's in the book? We published the Are You a Penn Stater guidebook. The full book is published within this book.
Oh, cool.
And we did a lot of one-on-one interviews. Mike Poorman was our editor, and we did. Joe Paterno was very kind to sit down with. We were students at the time, and starting in 1982 through the end of 1990, he would sit down and have an exclusive interview with us where he would really wax philosophically about what I'd call the North Star of the success with honor, the grand experiment. And so we captured and reprinted all of those articles, which fascinated me because I think it gave us the North Star as a brand. And one of the readers actually said this is kind of like a marketing brand building book on how what would be a state school became a global brand. You know, how this relatable, aspirational brand was this was the ground floor of the 80s, you know, and I started as a student here, and if you recall on CBS 60 Minutes that I'm
going to have to bring you back for the next segment. Gotta cut the commercial. We'll be back. So welcome back to the Obligatory PSU Pregame Show. Happy to have you here with us as we get ready to wrap up the 2021 season for the Nittany Lions. Happy Valley, super place. We love it. It's awesome, whether the team is undefeated or 7-4, like we are this year, guys. And Greg, I was enjoying the conversation. We wanted to bring you back, talk a little bit more with you. Greg Woodman, the author of Why Penn State. You can get that at whypennstate.com or find it in paperback on Amazon. Also available right here in State College at Lions Pride and the Student Bookstore.
Yes.
So, Greg, you said something earlier that I thought was really interesting, that this is not just about the heart and soul of Penn State, but kind of how that also got operationalized into a brand that is now as distinctive today as it was, you know, during the 70s and 80s when the core of this was really being formed. So it's a history in one extent, but it's almost like a how-to in another way, how to find your identity and turn it into a brand.
Yes.
I think everybody is interested in these days.
Yes, well, starting with 60 Minutes, when they did a special in 1978 before the Sugar Bowl,
right.
They did a whole piece on Penn State, and that's when you really was noticing kind of this global brand emerging. Sure. And that certainly winning the 82 National Championship, the 86 National Championship, Joe Paterno winning Sportsman of the Year, and the TV networks coming here for Saturday. This became kind of almost a counterculture kind of to college football brand. Mm-hmm. You know, back then when players were getting paid quite a bit and there was a lot of illegalities, you know, doing it right with the grand experiment and success with honor, you know, it became a very relatable, aspirational brand. And more than just Penn State alums fell in love with such an aspirational brand, which I still feel it still holds today as a global brand. When you wear that Penn State all over the world, it stands for something. And that something is what you guys talk about a lot, is the heart of why we as a community all join together. And, you know, I say I went to the Michigan game and tailgated before and after. Tough loss. You know,
thanks for bringing that up again.
Yeah. Well, however, I had a blast at the tailgate. Mm-hmm. I had some guests from Michigan. You know, the Blue Band played well. It was a great game. You know, and I teach a class at Penn State. And, you know, after such a loss, I'll come into my class on a Monday and said, how do you feel about your fellow students and how they played on Saturday? You know, they are student athletes. Right. They're fellow students that have midterms and papers to give. They just play football on Saturday. Yeah. You know, naturally the students were all mad, saying that they have one. They say, we are upset. These guys have one thing to do. And I said, oh, no, they want to graduate. Yeah, they want to get good jobs. A lot of them aren't going to the NFL. So I've always been just fascinated with kind of the student athlete. They're 19, 20-year-old kids. They represent our university, and they do it well, and they still do it well, even on a 7-4 season. And I'm into that. And this is what the book is about. It's about, we talk about the Phi Side, Gentle Thursday. We talk a lot about,
some of the older traditions that maybe some folks don't know about at this point, right? Because they were a while ago.
The regatta, this fun with a purpose that I think was part of this fun with a purpose that is the Penn State unique brand. And that's what we share together. That's why I say we have common shared values. And that's why I put it out, and it's I haven't really marketed it well, the book, but people are finding it.
Appearing on this show is not going to go
that's definitely not going to
direction.
You guys reach 45 million homes, and that's and again, the fact that you have a TV show, it's very similar to what I was doing back in the 80s, reaching this audience and providing them the shared values and culture that is part of our community.
Yeah.
It's a tailgate.
Well, it's a great conversation to have. I'm glad you put it in book form. Why Penn State? WhyPennState.com. Check it out. Pick up the book. We'll be back real soon.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
Welcome back, everybody. It's the Obligatory PSU Pregame Show. Appreciate Greg joining us.
Yeah.
Do check out his book. I think it's nice to have a conversation around Penn State that is a little deeper and more soulful and not fans of the same team clubbing each other to death over stupid questions about whether or not the coach is going to leave.
Lazy rivers and such.
Yeah, and so now I think we've got as definitive an answer as we were going to get on that.
Yep.
And it's an interesting time, Kev, for that news to be coming out, just as we're looking at what's going on in the coaching landscape. Number of big-time jobs are going to open up that maybe we didn't think, like Florida.
Yeah.
That just went open. Like more than half the Pac-12 might be replacing coaches. And our opponent this week, Michigan State, just totally tanked the entire coaching salary market for all of college football by agreeing to pay Mel Tucker $10 million a year to stay there only hours before he lost 56-7.
Yeah, good timing. Great timing.
Yeah, paid Mel Tucker all that money for having one half of a good season against a weak schedule.
Yeah.
With a bunch of transfer portal guys on the roster.
Yeah. Look, you're paying. Mel Tucker's not worth that in the sense of the true market, but you're paying to have stability. You're paying to not have to have a coaching search every 2 or 3 years. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot of these longer deals, Franklin and Tucker and all these guys, just longer deals just to avoid the whole thing about the transition, because the transition is so costly.
Oh, it's brutal.
So you'd rather overpay coaches a couple $1 million a year than do that.
Yeah, it's the pendulum swinging back to the other side, right? You went through this kind of phase of like 2 to 3 years. If it's not done, we're firing you and we're on to the next one, right? And I think that when you tie that into the transfer portal and the chaos that is kind of college football right now, it kind of, I don't think the numbers make sense, but the idea makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there is something to having continuity in your program, especially when you're dealing with kids and you're dealing with young men that you're bringing in for 4 to 5 years at a time. If you really want to build a program, that is how you do it. Now, whether that program gets you wins or to whatever your goal is, who knows? But I'm all for guys getting paid. It's definitely a lot of money for a guy who really hasn't proven himself in Mel Tucker. But I do like the idea of wrapping up a good coach for extra years if you can. Now, again, I don't agree with the amount of money they're paying him, but good for him.
It's like Nick Saban money for a guy with 1.5, quasi-impressive year this year and not so great last year under his belt.
Yeah.
But to your point, you're paying for the stability. This to me I think it started really when Purdue decided to pay Jeff Brom $6 million a year, which at the time sounded great. Now he's probably looking at Mel Tucker thinking, man, I got to fire my agent, right? But it was all about achieving stability. And Purdue had some down years after he got that contract, but they've had about as good a year this season as Purdue is going to have. And the question is, would they have been better off blowing it up and starting from scratch if he had ended up going to a school that was willing to pay him that money?
Right.
Probably not.
Probably not.
So, So how all that relates to Penn State is that we have, not without a little wrangling, but that's the profession.
The way it works.
Managed to keep James here as one of the longest tenured coaches in the country. It looks like he is not, in his own words, going to be going anywhere anytime soon. Kev, you had the #1 Franklin fan jersey on last week. How do you feel about all this?
Yeah, I mean, mixed, right? Because I'm glad he's here, and I'm glad it's stable and he's locked up. You know, there's like a dozen coaches, dozen men that are living that you would want to coach your football team at the highest level, and he is among them.
Absolutely.
Right? For better or for worse, despite all of the disappointments. You know, at what is it, 38% of his losses have come with a fourth quarter lead during his Penn State tenure. Like,
that's correct.
Just agonizing losses. But overall, built a program from, I won't say the ground up because it was there. Paterno left it there in a decent spot, all things considered. But he made it a modern program.
Right. He brought it from kind of the 80s and 90s into what it is now.
And we were so fortunate to have one guy here to do that rather than a few guys to do that. And obviously Bill O'Brien sort of kicked that off.
Bridged it,
And James has done that. So, and I think he represents the program well. I think he's a good dude generally, and he doesn't say embarrassing crap.
Right.
Like a good representative of the program. I find him to be insufferable so often, right? But that's more of a personal thing, right? I don't agree with the whole I'm not going to commit publicly so I can get this new like he didn't need to do that to get this contract. He did not need to go and play footsie with LSU and USC to get this new contract. He just didn't. He did not need to do that. And so I find him to be annoying, and I find these losses to be agonizing. And despite all that, I'm glad that he's here, and I'm hopefully for the long haul.
I think the fans want stability as well as the universities. The fans, you know, you get used to somebody. Well, Penn State fans especially.
We are the worst at that. Absolutely, or the best, one or the other, depending on how you look at it.
The best. I think.
Yeah.
It all depends on your perspective.
That's exactly right.
But yeah, to your point, with the transfer portal and the recruiting class coming in, you never want to switch coaches, but especially the position Penn State is in. It's the right move. We got Michigan State coming up. We'll talk about Mel Tucker's guys on the other side of the break. Stay with us. Hey, you're watching the Obligatory PSU Pregame Show. We're at Mike the Mailman's digs, the Her House at Linden Hall. Google it. You can stay here. It's a bed and breakfast, a very nice one that actually has a license, believe it or not.
We're legit the whole way.
You guys are typically booked up through football season, right, Mike the Mailman?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm your fake host, Chris Buchignani. I got my usual crew here with me. One game left in the Nittany Lions regular season for 2021. I got Brandon Noble, a former Penn State and NFL lineman. As I mentioned, Mike the Mailman, our gracious host, and former OnwardState.com managing editor, Kevin Horne. And what I am not going to do next, guys, is take the low-hanging fruit and make a land-grant trophy joke. I'm just not going to do it.
But Chris, those are so funny.
I mean, the internet's full of them. Yeah, go find your land-grant trophy humor elsewhere.
That's right.
But it is Sparty week.
That's right.
After a brief respite based on the way the Big Ten has mixed up its schedule, it's back at the end of the season.
Yeah. I do love that.
It was kind of a manufactured rivalry, to use that term, between George Perlis and Joe Paterno back in the early 90s.
Wow.
But over time, it's taken on a little bit of meaning to play Sparty at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to you can't manufacture a rivalry, but if they're the most similar to Penn State in the Big Ten. I think they were founded about a week before Penn State in February 1855. Land-grant institutions, obviously, both have legit creameries. Like, they're similar size, always similar in the rankings. Like, Michigan State and Penn State are very similar schools.
They also share a postage stamp, a 3-cent postage stamp, with actually Michigan State colors because they were like a week ahead of time. You're right.
Yep. They've got us beat by a week.
Once again, this is why you come to this program.
Knowledge.
I think they were February 15th, 1855. Penn State was obviously February 22nd, as everyone knows.
And before conference realignment spun totally out of control, they also had in common that they were both kind of black sheep in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Going back to Perlis, supposedly one of the things he told Joe when Penn State joined the Big Ten in the early 90s was that it was nice to no longer be the new kid on the block.
Right.
And Michigan State had joined in like in 1956 or something like that. I don't know. Don't quote me on that year, but it was a long time. And so both teams are, in their own ways, coming to the conclusion of seasons that at one time held a lot of promise, gave their fans visions of playoff contention, and are now both going to fall short of what they hoped for. I don't know. Like, Penn State has come out on the wrong side of more games, but after the thumping the Spartans took last week, Kev, I almost think like Penn State is probably in a better place mentally coming into this one.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you got to think they'll be demoralized, right, Michigan State after that. But they will be playing for a Rose Bowl berth in all likelihood, right?
Yeah,
because they've had I guess the Rose Bowl could technically take whoever they want. They could take the loser, assuming Ohio State kicks the West butt. They could take, 4-loss Wisconsin or 2-loss Iowa or something. But you got to imagine they'll take Michigan State if they win, because that'll be 10-2, and they have the head-to-head against Michigan. But so they have a lot. The Spartans have a lot to play for, and it feels good to be in a position to play spoiler for them finally. And it is important. We don't want. I mean, obviously this year is weird, and last year was awful. But you don't want for either the Michigan school to supplant Penn State as the second best team in the East, right? You don't want. We don't want to play that game, right? And the last 2 years, Penn State has been the third or fourth best team in the East, and we got to sort of put an end to that and make a statement out there. I think there's still a lot to play for, and eliminate the Pinstripe Bowl. More importantly for me personally, to win.
Mike the Mailman's still rooting for that Vegas Bowl. I know that. We'll talk bowl scenarios next week.
Yeah.
But I guess the biggest question when you play Michigan State this year is how are you going to stack up against their run game? Because, I mean, would Wake Forest have won the ACC this year, Noble, if Kenneth Walker didn't transfer?
Possibly. It's hard to go win at Clemson, but definitely would have had a chance. I mean, you imagine that kid in that offense down there, and he ends up in East Lansing, though. It's an important football game. I mean, like you said, for Penn State, it is important to go and win this game, against a team that everybody looks at as better than us. You know what I mean? Right, wrong, or indifferent. The good thing is we match up well defensively against their offense. The reason that Michigan State didn't run the ball, as you mentioned it in between, segments here, was that Ohio State just scored so fast.
Right. Yeah. When you're down 21-0 with like 9 minutes left in the first quarter, you're not running the ball too much for the remainder of the game. But Penn State, going all the way back to the Auburn game, has been bend but don't break on defense. James Franklin's even called them that. But we have given up yards in the run game, never more infamously than against Illinois. So a guy with decent blocking up front and a lot of individual skill at the position can eat against this D, at least between the 25s.
I wonder why these teams that have played us haven't just watched that Illinois film and run the same offense that those guys ran, right? You got to think they'd be able to do it better than Illinois would. But a lot to play for. I mean, if Penn State goes 9-4 this year, ends up ranked 18-ish, given all they had to overcome, quarterback injuries, traffic cone for offensive tackles, that would be, I think, a success overall and
absolutely
met or a little bit exceeded preseason expectations. So, I don't know, a lot to play for still.
Well, I'm thinking about this. Going back to what we said in the last segment, with the amount of turnover in the coaching ranks, Penn State does really want to play for the best possible bowl matchup, just as almost like an exhibition for recruits in terms of building the brand of the program. If you can hit that 9-win mark, get a marquee victory at the end of the season, which you need to beat Michigan State to be set up for, then you can sell program stability along with a chance to reload.
Right, stability and you're the missing piece, right? You're the missing piece. You're the missing piece.
Absolutely.
And that's your living room talk.
Yeah.
You make a great coach.
No, I don't.
Terrible
coach. Terrible coach. Terrible recruiter, Mike. I can promise you that. Yeah,
you're not good at lying.
Not good at that at all.
It's like you did say that.
At all.
Well, I'm good at lying. We can't wait to give our score predictions next. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Mike the Mailman. If you or your loved one or a friend has a gambling problem, don't hesitate to call the number below on the screen. They're there to help. Hi everybody, Mike the Mailman with another edition of Trends to Treasure. This will be for the weekend of December 5th. There are no college trends this weekend, so we're going to stay with the NFL. First up, we have Baltimore at Pittsburgh. Baltimore has covered 5 of the last 5 games, so take the Baltimore Ravens. Next up, we have Denver at Kansas City. Kansas City has covered 8 of the last 10 games, so the selection here would be the Kansas City Chiefs. Our third selection this weekend is Jacksonville at the LA Rams. The Rams have covered 5 of the last 5 games, so the play here is the Rams. Our bonus selection this week is San Francisco at Seattle. Seattle has covered 10 of the last 12 games, so the pick here will be the Seattle Seahawks. That's it for this week's Trends to Treasure. I'm Mike the Mailman, and don't forget, bet with your head and not with your heart. Go get 'em.
There are worse ways to make a living in life than betting money every week on Mike the Mailman's Trends to Treasure. Like appearing on this program, for example.
That's exactly
so
right.
here we are once again, guys. It's our last regular season random number generator segment. We will have one more, mercifully, for Penn State's bowl game.
Oh, yeah. They don't decline, yeah.
We were assuming that at a minimum of 7 wins, we will accept a bowl invitation.
Right. Don't let Brandon Smith in that room. let John Dotson make that decision.
That's right.
Even though he probably won't play in the game, but we'll see.
He's going to play.
He'll play. Oh, yeah.
He's like Saquon.
think so?
Oh, yeah.
He's like Saquon. He's going to
yeah.
ask James to play, maybe on a limited basis, but he'll play.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that prediction. All right, speaking of predictions, we got to forecast the score of Penn State, Michigan State this weekend. It is in East Lansing, as Kevin alluded to, probably, in all likelihood, very good shot for Michigan State to beat us and go to the Rose Bowl, which harkens back to some similar games that Penn State has played over the years. You know, I think about 2016, playing for a division title, 2008, playing for a Rose Bowl invite.
Yeah.
So now the tables have turned a little bit. And they're not just going to have the land grant trophy on the sidelines, they're maybe going to have that
Which
bowl
in
full of
itself is
roses.
enough. It is enough.
Indeed. So who wants to jump in on this one first?
I'll go.
I like
I know. Hey, you know what?
Thanks, Brandon.
That's what I'm here for, guys. That's what I'm here for. I think this is a good football game. I really do. I think Sparty got knocked down a notch last week. You know, one of the good things about everybody kind of being sick is you're a little bit more rested, right? It'll be interesting to see what happens with Clifford, you know, and how that all plays out.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good football game, and I think we go out there and we beat them 27-24, in kind of just an old school Big Ten, relatively low-scoring football game. A couple good defenses playing each other, run the football. Michigan State, well, we don't do that, obviously, but you know, the quick passing game for us, and I think Dotson and our skill guys are the difference.
Yep, talking about Dotson, that guy is still in the Blitnikoff conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wants to cement his place in the program record books. I think this is one of his last stages to really turn it on and do it. I do like that. Kevin Horne, how are you feeling about this one?
It's a tough game to handicap, right? It opened at Michigan State favored by 1 point. We'll see where it ends up. But I don't know. You have to really be a pro like Mike to really get a sense of this game, just because it's all thrown off by Michigan State laying an egg last week at Ohio State, right? If Michigan State even cuts that Ohio State victory in half, like this is probably a touchdown game or so. Yeah. So it's really hard to handicap. Right. I honestly think it's a coin flip. I really do. I mean, I can see what you just said happening. I can also see Sean Clifford getting beat up like a rag doll out there all day. And Penn State's defense is going to show up, but again, it's one of the probably the best running back in the country they're up against. I think they're probably up for the task, but I worry given the Illinois game. I don't know. I can't take them. I got to go Michigan State 24, Penn State 15.
Nice 15.
So this defense has not given me a reason to doubt them all season long. We know they're going to show up. And what I said earlier about between the 25s, I think Walker is going to get his yards, but as the available space starts to narrow down on them and they can really focus on stopping the run game, I think the scenario you described is plausible because they can move the ball around, down the field. Are they going to be able to get in the end zone? You keep points at a premium, and you stay in the game. Mike the Mailman, how you feeling?
Well, one of the rules I use for handicapping.
I know how you're feeling, but go ahead.
But one of the rules I use is when a team gets beat up as badly as Michigan State did last weekend, that really gives them an edge in the next week. However, I really like Penn State's defense. I love their defense, and I don't think Michigan State's that good. I like Penn State. I like Penn State winning by 17. I do. I love it.
See,
I like the line.
Because the line is even or only 1 point, Mike can't do the thing. If Mike ever picks Penn State not to cover, that means he actually thinks they're going to lose. And now he can't do that because you can't lose by a half a point.
That's right.
So he's got to play that game.
So going back to Mel Tucker's contract extension, I just like it just mystifies me the irony of this guy signing to make $10 million a year right before he goes out and gets his ass absolutely handed to him by Ohio
on a
State.
platter.
Yep.
He is at some point going to have to prove this is not same old Michigan State. And classic same old Michigan State is to get their fans' hopes up through the first 2/3 of the season, brutally dash them, and then at one point just absolutely shut it down and quit. And a 56-7 loss to Ohio State when you're a top 10 team, it's a perfect time to shut it down and quit. So I can see this going either way, but I am going to roll with the Nittany Lions. I like our defense. I like classic Michigan State. I'm going to pick Penn State to win 24-20.
I like it.
So Brandon Noble, Mike the Mailman, Kevin Horne, it's been a pleasure doing this with you. We will come back and look back at the whole season next week after we know Penn State's final regular season record. We hope you'll join us. Enjoy the game, everybody. Go State.
Life is just a little bit happier here in Happy Valley, Pennsylvania. Whether you're taking an adventurous hike or spending your days in a sunny garden. Whether you're checking out a small town or taking in the vibrancy of a small city, we can explore the wonders under the earth. Or find inspiration in history. We can cheer together or laugh together. Refuel. Recharge. Be inspired. Delighted. And well, get happy. Find your happy place here in Happy Valley, Pennsylvania. Plan your next adventure at happyvalley.com.